computer. So you guys are all recorded now. Okay, so just a couple more seconds here. I'd like to really stay on top of our game here on kickoff time. We're going to start at 5 or 6 or 4, depending which time zone you're on. And I'm going to actually have to cut out here right at 5:45 as well. So, hey, welcome. It is time for us to start here. Thank you all for taking some time out to listen to me yap about a mobile home park. And in the story behind it, I think that we will provide you some good content and good value on this. Because it does involve a lot. It involves more than just buying it, it's fixing it up and renting it. So we had some really cool and also disastrous events go through this process. And I'm excited to kind of share those to you and tell you what we did and how we had to pivot midway, because this was certainly not the most typical deal, but it ended with some really nice results. And so if you guys have not met Alex yet, you got Alex Felice here. He works for Climb Capital, runs a lot of our media and marketing. And so he's going to play the, I would say he's going to play the moderator version and pretend like he doesn't know what's going on with this deal, but he actually doesn't. So he's only been with us for about a month or so now. And so he really has no back history on this. So you guys are going to learn with him through this process on how we did it and what happened. And so this is the Oak Grove Mobile Home Park / RV Park debrief, and how we basically bought this thing, operated it for 4 years, and then exited it last Friday. We actually completed this sale just 3-4 days ago. So Alex, why don't you lead us through this?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex, as Bob introduced me to. So I don't know that much about this deal, which kind of let me, like he said, I can ask the questions and learn with everybody. I've been a real estate investor for a long time, so I feel like I'll have questions that you guys will appreciate and identify with. And we're going to ask a bunch of standard questions, because the goal here is to do this kind of on a weekly, somewhat weekly basis. And so we'll add some consistency in it from a content perspective. And then what we'll do is we're going to open up for Q&A. So my hope is in 28 minutes, we'll be able to open this up for Q&A, and we'll do 15 minutes of that. And then Bob's going to split. So we're going to get this, we're going to shove a lot of content into a short amount of time. And we're going to start right now. So the general gist of this, Bob, is mobile home park. I'm sure you had a plan, and we're going to ask you that in a moment. But the general gist of this is you had a plan of action to buy.
Yeah.
To buy an underperforming property, and then you had a hurricane hit this thing.
Yep.
And then we still exited at a profit. So yeah, give me the 5,000-foot view of this deal.
Okay, so very good. Found this property via a wholesaler and previous partner, a gentleman who we had also bought another deal and operated together. So he was acting as a property manager. He brought this deal to us. We bought it as a 46-unit mobile home park on the west side of Pensacola. Operated it somewhat successful for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And then again, 2020 happened, both from an economic perspective of COVID, and then Hurricane Sally came through in, I believe it was September of 2020, and quite literally destroyed the park. I'll share some pictures here in a minute. It was pretty devastating to the park, to the tenants, to us, et cetera. And man, it was, I'll be honest with you, it was a real tough time figuring out a way out of that. So what we did was we did the best we could. We cleaned it up, and then we said, what do we have left? And we made a pivot there, and we'll talk about that in detail in the future, what that pivot was. Took over management, put the right people into place, really cultivated some leadership from internal to the park and changed the culture there, and then exited 3 days ago. So numbers wise, we bought it for $975 and we sold it for $2.1 million last week. And I had an additional $140,000 on top of the purchase price in the CapEx into that. So all in, we were at just under 1.1 million and exited at 2.1 million. And this was a partnership where we used investors and we raised the money and we did it that way. So that's the big picture.
Okay. Tell me the general stats of the deal, location, the amount of units, and then what was like the original plan? I mean, I know the plan wasn't hurricane. So like, what was the original kind of goal? Like, what'd you see? What was the value you saw in it?
Yeah. So I think, again, 46 units, mobile home park. When we bought it, the important part here, there's two major pivots. So the important part we bought it is 46, which we burnt literally all of the trailers. So they were all park owned homes. And so if you guys are into the investing side of it, mobile home parks, basically your most deals come one of two way: park owned homes, where you're buying the park, the land, all the trailers, everything, or you can buy a park that is primarily filled with tenant owned homes, where you are buying the land and the tenants actually own the homes themselves. And so this was a 46 unit park where we owned all the homes. We bought that. It's on about 7 acres. It's not in the greatest part of town. It's in the west side of Pensacola. It's literally right across the street from a scrap yard. So nothing pretty, but it wasn't bad. And so I'm going to share my screen actually, because this is the first time I've done this in a while. And I went back and looked at what did I think I was going to do with this park when I bought it. And so you guys should be able to see this. Back in the day, this was the level of sophistication that went into me prepping our deals and putting in here. So you'll forgive the crudeness of it. We actually make it a little bit prettier now. And so I'm going to scroll down here. So you see the purchase price there, $950. There's an interesting story behind that. Also a lesson learned. So I did have it under contract for $950, but I chose to go with a new bank that I've never used before for like, 1/10 of a better interest rate. Well, the end result is that bank basically stretched this thing out, cost me an extra 3 months to get it closed. And in order to keep the deal alive, the seller said, "Hey, we've got to, or I'm not going to sell it to you unless you increase the price." So I had to give him an extra $25,000 on the purchase price just to be able to keep the deal alive. And so, takeaway there, lesson learned was sometimes going with a bank that well, that can close quickly and do it is really not that more expensive in the long run, just to save a small fraction on an interest rate. So going down here, some pictures of what it looked like when we bought it. A lot of park-owned homes, a lot of FEMA trailers. And here was the projections we had put out there. So why did I like this? I knew the rents were a good bit below market. I knew that, I knew that we could increase those. We basically bought it at a 12 cap, about a 12 to 13 cap. At the time, it was an okay deal. It wasn't bad. It wasn't horrible. Right now, that'd be a really great deal as cap rates have compressed. And then we knew there were some areas that we could shave off with the utilities, right? So we thought we could build back the water and do that. And so if you look down here, there's an NOI or where I thought I could increase that up over time. And you'll notice, you kind of remember, about this number. So, but more importantly, dropping down here to the exit, here's my assumptions on the exit is that I thought I could decrease the cap rate down to what I thought was an aggressive 11 cap on the valuation, and be able to exit and still make it a nice return for myself and for the members. So that was the going in assumptions. That's what I thought the plan was just raise the rents a little bit, build back some utilities, hold it for cash flow, and sell it in 4 or 5 years.
Kind of a side question. This is in Pensacola. We obviously have other properties in Pensacola. Did the hurricane affect any other properties, and was this a compounding problem?
It did affect some of the other properties, but not nearly to this extent. Like this one was, I felt like the eye must have went through this area. We have another park that took some pretty extensive damage as well, but this one certainly took the brunt of it.
So when did you close on this one, and then when did the hurricane hit?
So it was quite a while. We had this, when did we buy it? We closed this one, I think, in 2018. So I had it for about 2 years.
Okay. And well, I guess the question I'd ask is how much CapEx, how much capital allocation did you have left over to sink into repairs?
Oh, at that time, none. Right. So there was no planned CapEx on this one. We didn't raise any excessive CapEx. There was no construction loan on this. This was just sort of sucked. And insurance, wind and hail insurance on a mobile home park, really is not practical. I mean, realistically, these homes are worth $5,000 to $10,000. The insurance to cover them, for the park would have been $60,000 to $80,000 a year just in an insurance there. So for this type of park, we covered what we could, but it was wind and hail is not something that the insurance could afford. So basically, what we do called self-insure. So what happened was, for lack of better words, I just had to fund it myself in the meantime, and come up with that money to fix it up and get it cleaned back up.
I love that, actually, because it's good to know that the operators backs the deal. I like that.
Yep. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we had no plan for big capex, and then when you had this big problem, you solved this with what, sweat, labor? You just cleaned the place up,
Yeah,
and tried to tidy it up.
So I should have found the picture of me and Jeremy out there the day after the hurricane with chainsaws. So a picture of Jeremy with a chainsaw, sweaty, is a bit unnerving for all of us. And so, no, I mean, we were out there physically cleaning and stuff. It was, let me show you. Let's show you the picture. Did I share that picture yet? I'm going to share the picture of that's down one of the streets. So just trees everywhere. There was, I think we had 14 homes that were crushed by trees, all through there. So, but we did what we could. Obviously, it was too big of a task for two guys to fix, and we had other properties to deal with. And so, no, we just used our construction crew. They get on there and cleaned it up. Worked with the power company to get power up and running. We were, I was pretty proud there. We were the first property on that street to get power and water back going. The rest of the properties and the rest of the landlords had just basically, they were going to wait a couple weeks until FEMA or someone came in and helped. And, to the credit of Scott, who is our owns construction lead, he's like, dude, we can't just wait for FEMA to fix this. Let's get to work and get it fixed. We'll figure out the money on the backside. And so that's what we did.
What was the effect directly to the tenants? Did they leave? Did they not pay? Were they fussing? How much damage was done to their property?
Yeah, I think that was actually, looking back now, I never really thought about it. That was really the tipping point for the property. Prior to that, it was a tenant base that was hard to collect from. It was problems, issues, crime, etc. And when that happened, to be honest, we seized the opportunity to use that as an excuse or a reason to get rid of the people we didn't want there. But the other side was that they saw us getting out there and working and fixing it. And from that point on, we didn't have a problem with the tenants anymore. So a lot of people were forced to leave. Like I said, we lost 14 homes, like literally crushed, put them in a dumpster, gone. So that wasn't a rental unit anymore. And then the remaining units, had some damages and stuff, and we got those fixed back up. So the tenant base changed. It became a community after that. They helped each other fix and clean, and we were out there and spent a lot of money to try to get it fixed. And so that was a pretty pivotal moment. I kind of just now realized that's probably the tipping point from the tenant base was.
Yeah, I talk about this with apartments all the time. With single family homes, you have a house, but with a multifamily complex like this, you have a community. You have a cultural aspect to the way it makes money, or to the way it runs, rather. And so, yeah, I can see that, where you have like a shared bonding experience kind of thing.
Yep, we shared a lot of pizza.
How is NOI affected? You lose 14 units. Are those units you owned, or those units that tenants owned?
Right. At the time, we owned everything. So those are homes that we owned. Obviously, vacancy went down, or vacancy went up. Occupancy went down. Our expenses went way up. So yeah, I mean, it was bad. We went from rent roll like 25,000 a month to a couple months after that was $12,000 a month was what we collected. So about half, lost about half.
and you replace those units over a couple months.
Yeah. So what we did, right? Homes are presently really hard to find, even right now, and they weren't much better back then. It's still just hard to find a used home. It's hard to find a new home. Period. So we were left with a few options. We got all these vacant spots where there used to be a mobile home. There's nothing there. What are we going to do? Well, we had just now at this point in 2020, we had bought an RV park, which we talked about last week. We had bought that one in early April, March sometime. And so we had like 6 months of operating an RV park experience there where people live in a long time. Like, well, wait a second. Why don't we just, what do we got to do to set up this spot to have a RV? I've already got water there. I've already got power. I've already got sewer. So working with the contractors and Scott, it's like, what do we got to do? So let's there. And so worked with the county. Turns out we in Escambia County could actually put two RV spots per one mobile home. And so I lost 14 homes. And so we split those and I gained back an additional 14. So we went from 46 spots to 60 pads. I think we finished out with whatever mass, a little bit blurry, but about 32 mobile homes, no, 32 or 28 mobile homes in the opposite of RVs. I can't remember exactly what the ratio was when we got done. And that's what we did. And then we actually was able to fill it up pretty quickly. The RV pads themselves, we rented for $400 a month. And then we would build a power back on it. So what used to be maybe a $650 a month rental where I owned the home and had to pay for all the maintenance and clean up everything went from that to making $800 a month where I didn't own anything except for the dirt. And that's really where the light bulb came on for us. Is like, that's a pretty good model. I like this a lot. And this property is probably worth a lot more than I thought it was all of a sudden. Let's talk to some brokers and see what this thing is worth. And I think Jared is actually on here, but Jared was the broker on this and helped us come up with the valuation, and that's what we ran with.
To kind of talk about how this plays into a larger transition for Climb Capital, because we're looking at RV parks left and right. But a lot of people now are looking at mobile home parks. A lot of other operators, and I look at that kind of, which is why I love the RV park strategy, where some people are going, I can own these essentially affordable housing in mobile home parks, but you have this property that's gonna go down in value and it's not worth much, and you have to maintain it, and then you have tenants who live there, but then you can do the opposite, which is what we're kind of trying to do, which is like, hey, we can get a higher quality tenant base for a lot less liability, a lot less responsibility, or I guess liability. I don't have to own. You just have to own the dirt.
Right.
This is the moment where you said that's kind of the way we're going to pivot rather than mobile home parks?
Yeah, I mean, it was, in the idea that in our area, and I think most of the Southeast and really probably a large part of America, there's a huge demand in general for RVs, whether that's RV vacation spots or work traveling RVs. When I show you the ending picture. So the ending picture here, right? This is just, I'm not a great photographer, but here's what the place ends up looking like afterwards, right? There's a $70,000 truck with another $70,000 gooseneck behind it, living, working out of that. That's not a vacationer. That's someone who is, a shutdown place, nurses, traveling nurses and stuff. Like they're a good tenant. They're making good income, and then this is a lifestyle choice. They're not on vacation at this park, but they're happy. We're happy. It's a much, I don't have to pay for that truck. I don't have to pay for that gooseneck. I don't have to pay for anything that breaks on it. Right. And so yeah, that was a huge eye opener for us of let's do this. This is a better option.
How many RV parks? I know I'm kind of going off from this deal, but how many RV parks have you bought since?
4, working on the 5th.
Okay, excellent. We touched a little bit about numbers, but can you run through them again one more time for me before we kind of wrap up this part of the session?
Yeah, so bought it for $975. The investment or the raise on this one, again, relatively small deal, but for us, it was a big deal back then. So 975 raised $325,000 in capital from investors. And so our loan was about 650, then continued to pay down. It was a 20-year loan. So actually started out at 5.75% interest. Then I got that reduced and modified to 5% over the life of that. And then we exited at 2.1 million. So once I returned the initial capital of 325,000 to the investors, then I had another 8 something to distribute. So the investors' total return on this was about 122% on top of their money, which came out to, I think, 37% IRR. We did make some cash distributions throughout some quarterly distributions throughout the life of this one, some cash flow built into that as well. And what else am I missing?
Did you, well, I have some questions. Did you pause distributions during the hurricane?
Yes.
I thought so. That seems plausible and reasonable.
Yeah. Also, when COVID happened and there was rent restrictions and all that stuff. So 2020 wasn't a fun year, but we got through it.
Yeah, we did the same thing. Well,
had I not done that, I say it was not a fun year, but had that not happened, I probably could have sold the park for, I don't know, 1.4, 1.5. So that forced me to create another $500,000 in value.
What was do you have it? I don't know if you have it handy. Do you have the final IRR, NOI numbers? The projection was like 150, 163 in 5 years, but I'm curious what you actually.
Yes, I'm going to pull it up. And so good point as I'm pulling that up is that you'll notice the NOI is less than what I had projected. And I'll talk through that in a second, why that's actually a good thing. It's not really a good thing, why it's not a horrible thing. So here's the actuals for the year. Here's what you really care about is the totals. So the NOI, we ended up at 143,607. So what is maybe lost in here, this is a little bit less than I projected. I think I was hoping for like 160. But remember, we did 2 things. One was we increased the unit count from 46 to 60. But at the same time, I decided I no longer want to own mobile homes again, like ever. I will happily buy them, but as soon as I do, I'm going to work on reselling them. And so we began at the same time of expanding of reselling the homes themselves to either the tenants, to the residents, or we actually would sell them off in groups of 2 or 3 to rehabbers who would fix them, flip them, and resell them to a tenant, or 2 or 3 to buy and hold guys who, they didn't have millions of dollars to start investing, but they had $20,000 or $30,000. They would buy them, and then they became the owner. So they still paid us the lot rent the whole time there. And so what that did is basically we went from a 46 unit mobile home park that I owned all the homes to a 60 unit mobile home / RV park, and I owned none of the homes. And so that dramatically changes the exit cap rate or the valuation and the desirability to the next buyer. So the next buyer is walking into basically should be a turnkey, hands-off property. And so although my NOI went down, we sold this at what is that cap rate? I can't do the math in my head. 6.5, 7 cap instead of 11.
That's pretty good from 11.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, you want to buy high cap rates and sell low.
Correct. Yeah, that's a different class, but it dramatically increased the price per dollar.
Okay, I got 7 minutes because we're going to stay on time. I want to ask you, give me some big lessons. I know one of the first lessons you said was about banking.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess, I don't know this, but my guess is one of the second big lessons you learned was going to be about maybe CapEx reserves. But you can answer what you like. What were the big lessons of this deal?
Yeah, so big lessons. We really did. So I'll hit on those. Yeah, number one, from now on, I go with banks that I know and trust. I give them. I'm trying to expand my network of banking, and I'm going to give them an easy deal, a layup deal in the beginning. And if there's any hint of them not being able to handle it, then I'm going to back up and go back to my go-tos. And most of the time I end up with only a few banks there in the process. Number two, yes, hurricanes come, you have insurance. It's a little bit hard to predict from, but we've always been somewhat prepared or are willing to fund the deal ourselves out of our own pocket, instead of doing a capital call to our investors. Jeremy and I, unfortunately, had done this a couple other times, and we're in the process of it now. We'll fund the deal, get it fixed back up, and then sell it back there on the CapEx side. So a little hard to predict that side of it. The third thing, or 3, 4, right? Getting rid of ownership of homes is great. RV parks, we really like a lot. And then the fifth thing that I don't think we've touched on at all is really the success here is because of, I'm going to jump to our last question here of who the MVP of the deal is. The success here really revolved around us finding one of our residents who lived in the park and just had a good heart and a great work ethic and really had a phenomenal resume and background, but just had some hard hits in life and had some things that put her in that position where she needed to be there. But we took a little bit of a risk on her, and man, she killed it as the property manager. Phenomenal. She is the one who built that culture. She is the one who, for the last 6 months, my rent delinquency was 0, like 100% occupied, 0% deficit. She collected all the money all the time, right? And she built a great culture. And so I've got to give her credit on that. Of course, the construction guys have always bailing us out of problems and getting that going. But that was a lesson learned. Like, sometimes people's present condition and financial whereabouts doesn't match their talent. And so that was an awesome surprise for us. She will never have to worry about a job again, because she will be going with us wherever we go, and we'll make sure that she stays with us.
I was going to ask you, is that something you can replicate, but you're going to keep her with you?
Yeah. So we're going to take her with us, and we are replicating it in the character traits we're searching for on our employees from the property managers. I care a lot less about their resume, and I care a lot more about their drive and motivation and character traits than I do their resume. And that's proven to be pretty successful so far.
Awesome. This is all fantastic. Okay. Real quick before we go to Q&A, I just want to say thanks everybody for coming out. If you don't follow us on social, please do so. I think I collected everybody's email addresses, so I am going to get you on our list to do for next deals. If you would like to schedule a chat with Bob or Jeremy over Zoom, I can get you, please reach out to me. I'm going to put my email address here in the chat. And if you want to do a deep dive and talk more about deals or future deals, everything starts with that conversation. So please make sure you do that. And we will start this with Joseph asked why you didn't refi and get your money back tax-free, which is a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. Something we thought about. Honestly, it was just not the asset class type I really want to be in anymore. We did mobile home parks. We did Class C apartments for quite a while. We've been pretty successful with all of them, or very successful with all of them for the end result. It's just sort of not something I feel like I want to deal with anymore. Is part of it is that if I can pivot to a different asset class that makes the same money or better, but has tenants that pay me before they get there, that are happy and happy when they leave, right? So I don't have to call for an eviction at an RV park. I just call the cops and have them evicted, trespassed immediately. So that's part of it. This one it was an older property, so it has old infrastructure, septic tank, septic system, has those really big trees. A lot of them fell down in the hurricane, but that's going to happen again. And so this was just a time to make a great profit and move on to a different type of asset class and limit some known liabilities that are coming in the future.
Yeah, and to kind of add on to that, we've put out a bunch of content now on our website. There's some blogs about, our ideas about switching to RV parks. So you can check that out, like for a more nuanced and in like a longer form answer. But there's a lot of reasons why we've been moving to RV parks. And I didn't realize personally that this was like the inflection point, but I know we've been working on it for a while. So
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, about 15 more minutes. I know other people have some questions. Oh, here you go.
I
What's
didn't
your
see that.
what's your buying criteria? Yeah, what's our buy box
Right now, or
right now?
yeah. Right now, we're looking for primarily, well, I'll caveat that with, we are not going away from apartment complexes or RV parks just because of the workload. We're going to buy away from them because the workload is the same, but the returns have diminished immensely with the influx in of capital that's coming into there and the competition, the prices. I just literally 5 minutes before we jumped on here, I got $14 million worth of offers on our apartment complexes that we have. The realistic cap rate, the in-place cap rate that they're offering on is like less than 2. And we have eager and willing buyers at that price. And so they're obviously not buying for a cash flow perspective. They're looking for a long-term there. So with that type of buyer as competition, doesn't make sense to stay in that asset class and do that type of work for no return. We will still absolutely buy a phenomenal mobile home park or mobile home park or apartment complex if and when the prices come back to make sense, and they simply aren't right now. So right now our buy box is RV parks. There's a lot of opportunity still out there with the original owners, mom and pop there. We love parks that are on or close to an exit on an interstate, so major thoroughways, roughly 75 to 100 units or bigger. Parks that have water feature, so whether that's the beach, pond, stream, river, really cool pool, water park, whatever, some type of attraction to bring people to that park or in the area. We've got a park that's up in Cincinnati that we really like. It's on a lake, it's on an exit, and it's one exit away from the ARC exhibit. So hundreds of thousands of people pour into that area every summer there. So that's our criteria. So geographically, we're pretty broad. I want something that's open year round, that's not seasonal. So Matt actually talked to us today about a hotel lodge park place in the middle of the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming, but it's open year round. So we're interested in it.
All right. And then Scott asks, how much of the cap rate on the Oak Grove property was due to the market versus how much based on the pivot from mobile home park to, like, you change the structure of the property?
Great. I think that we realistically, from what we've seen, you probably change your cap rate from about 2 to 3%. And actually, Jared, if you're on here, Jared Jackson, as a broker, I'd love to get your input on this, but if he's not, that's fine. I think you drop your cap rate about 2 to 3% going from park owned homes to tenant owned homes. And so that's probably accounts for about 3% of the change. And then I think the other delta for us is probably about a 2% drop in the cap rate as well. So that's market cap rate, right? I can't take credit for that. And then I think we probably gained a point or two or reduced a point or two on the cap rate just at the purchase of it was a good deal. I mean, it was a good deal when we bought it. It was probably worth, 1.1 to 1.2 million when we bought it, and we bought it for 975. So there was some, you add all those together, I think that's how we made that delta.
Awesome. Any other questions?
You don't have to type them. You can.
Yeah, you can unmute if you are muted and you can't tell me, and I don't want anybody to feel shy.
Hey, this is Joe McCullough. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hey, this is great. Appreciate y'all's time. My concern, or maybe I don't understand it proper, if you could kind of elaborate a little bit deeper. So an RV park, I mean, obviously it's kind of a transient group of people. You mentioned traveling nurses, et cetera. I mean, aren't you a little bit concerned, like an apartment, you got a lease, right? I mean, maybe you put them under a lease. I don't know. I'm just worried about somebody in the middle of the night, not necessarily not paying their weeks or months rent or whatever, but it's like, I'm off to Colorado and to go skiing, and boom, you're out of that revenue.
Yep. So that's a really great question and great point. So I think it's important to kind of differentiate. There's two different RV park models, right? So with Oak Grove, it was a mobile home park, and then we also had RV spots. in those spots, they were a 12-month lease, just like anything else. And yes, they could leave much easier. They could literally hook up and leave, but there was an actual lease on these ones where they would sign a 12-month lease and put a deposit down and all those things. So there's, you kind of split it in half, where you have that type, and then you have the resort, right, where you're paying by the night. And so the pay by the night stuff, you know they're going to leave. It's expected they're going to leave, and that's okay. If you look at for all the parks that we have right now, if you look at the difference between the monthly rate, let's call it $400 for a month, they would normally sign a 6 to 12 month lease on for the area. The equivalent nightly rate, including the vacancy, usually generates us about 3 times the revenue on the nightly side. So that same spot in that same park would generally produce us around $1,000 to $1,200 a night in revenue. And so even though the vacancy might be 25%, might be up to 15%, that revenue is still generally more than the monthly rate. And so it's okay to have that vacancy coming and going.
Oh, can I also add into that? There's a little bit more diverse underwriting as well, in terms of it's more complex, where you have some monthly renters and you have some percentage that are overnighters. And then Bob, you're doing a bunch of interesting things with Airbnbs.
Yeah. And so what we like about this, and I kind of going back to that again, right? An RV park or a mobile home park always affords a ton of flexibility. And so if something is not working, you can change that business model inside of that property very quickly. With an apartment complex, you're an apartment complex. You can change some things, but you're simply a place to live. And so I can take an RV park as an example and really turn it into long-term living by simply changing my rules and regulations and rates, and say, if you want to stay here, you have to sign a 6-month lease, and this is how much is a month, right? I can change an RV resort into an RV park or a mobile home park overnight. And I can do it the other way too. If the market is going really well and the area is growing, I can kick out everyone who is on a monthly lease at the end of their month and say, this is now a nightly or weekly rental, and that flexibility. So our model that we're running right now, and that we're shooting for in all the parks, is we'd like to have about 10% of the pads we're putting tiny homes or cabins or park models, however you want to call it. It's a house on wheels in there, and those are set up on Airbnb and short-term rental things. And then we're running about the remaining another 50% or 60% on the long-term rentals, which we're renting by the month. And then the difference there's left 30 to 40% of the park on overnight retail is what we call it. So your retail, driving down the interstate, pull in, take a nap, or on vacation, 3 or 4 days, cook some hot dogs and leave. And that's the model we're running inside of the park itself. So we feel like we're fairly well protected across the spectrum there.
Hey, Tim, I see your question here. Would you mind asking that on mic, just because I'm not sure that I understand that. I don't want to butcher it. Oh, so sorry.
Okay, so Tim says, does a shift towards RV parks mean that you're looking to chain exit timelines for other deals you currently own that are apartment complexes and mobile home parks to possibly take advantage of the current cap rates? Yeah, I think so. I think I understand your question. So basically, what Tim's asking, thanks, Tim. Hey, actually, you're unmuted, so go ahead and make sure I understand the question there.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, obviously you guys already own mobile home parks and, apartment complexes, and based on the numbers you were just talking a minute ago and where you're trying to go in the future, are you more aggressively trying to unload those that you already have that don't fit the RV model, or are you potentially looking to still stay the course on those assets that you've already purchased? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So on the assets that we already have and we've already purchased, none of the apartment complexes particularly have we been really trying to sell or even aggressively selling, but I get minimum of a call a day, if not 2 or 3, and then get offers on a pretty regular basis for our apartment complexes that are unsolicited, unasked for, unmarketed, et cetera. And that happens all the time. And so, to be honest with you, as the prices have continued to go up and this thing continues to increase, it's some of the offers are getting hard to pass up. And that happened last week on a apartment complex that realistically, we're going to sell. We'd planned on owning it for 10 years. We bought it last year, but there's no way we would pass on the way the prices are right now. So I don't know if we're going to try to deliberately do that, but we're going to take opportunity. I forgot who said the quote, but it's really hard to go broke making a profit. And so when someone offers us something that I think is ridiculous, I'm going to take that opportunity, and then we'll go find something else better to do with that money the next time.
Got it. Thanks.
Mike asked, do the retail tenants pay by credit card prior to gaining entry to the park? If not, how do you ensure the payment is made for their stay?
Yeah, great question, Mike. So yeah, one of the things that we're finding is a lot of the parks, Mike's investor on some of our deals. So one of the things we're finding as a great benefit is there's some really nice parks that are really well run and physically great condition, but there's little to no technology and little to no marketing on the front side. And so the one that we just bought in Coleman, right? All their reservation system was still via phone and a little piece of paper, and they put it in a Rolodex, and that's their reservation system. Okay. So we'll launch Monday. We'll go live on our website and CampSpot that takes online payment, online processing, all that stuff. And so there's really 2 ways. You either book and pay ahead of time, or you show up at the park and you pull up to the office in your truck or RV, and you go in there and you pay ahead of time as well. And then you go to your spot. So it's one or the other, cash, credit card, whatever. You pay ahead of time. That's how it works.
All right, I got 2 more questions, and then it's 6:41 here. I know you got a hard stop time in 5 minutes, so we're gonna ask these last 2 questions.
Okay.
For the refinance of a mobile home, what is normal turnaround to get to closing? Also, as an investor, when owning mobile home when owning mobile home at the park and intend to sell to the other buyer, they want to move the trailer, but is the trailer stationary and has to stay with the park, or is it able to be moved?
I'll kind of speed through these. So RVs, or mobile homes or RVs, whatever, it's really no different. It's personal property. Think of it just like a car. Okay. So someone owns that car. If it's on your property, they have the right to move that if they are the owner. If I'm the owner, they cannot take that property. And so it just depends on who owns the home. Once the tenant becomes the owner of the home, they have the right to move that home to somewhere else. And I think that's just the question. Well, what stops them from moving it somewhere else? Well, the reality is most of these homes, well, not most of them, mobile homes right now cost a bare minimum $5,000 to move. Probably realistically more towards the 7-8 mark by the time you move the porches, set up, breakdown, plumb, et cetera. So it's not an easy endeavor to move a mobile home. Once it's in there, it's going to stay there. They're not going to spend $7,000-8,000 to move a mobile home over a rent increase of $25. Does that answer your question there?
Yeah, that was from
Joe asked about the manager. Yeah, so the parks we have right now, everything we have, there's a full-time manager, and then all except for 2 of the parks, the managers live on site.
And then, how many parks do you currently own, and the ratio between RV, retail, and other guest types at the same? What's the ratio on the other parks?
Most of the parks when we buy them are probably closer to like a 75% long-term, 25% short-term, or even 80-20. The ones we really like to buy are like where they're 90% long-term and 10% short-term, because we know there's a huge upside to change that ratio. And again, the in ratio is we like to have 10% cabin Airbnb, we like to have 50% long-term and then 40% retail.
I got 1 minute if anybody else wants to drop one question in there.
Okay.
Trying to squeeze it.
All right. So,
All right.
yeah,
Sorry.
want to thank everyone for spending 45 minutes with us together. I know a lot of you guys, so I appreciate it. If there's anyone I haven't met, I'd love to meet you soon. I see Miss Fran on there, so I want everyone right now to give Miss Fran a clap high five. She is that special young lady that really turned around the park. She was our MVP on this deal, and just a phenomenal person, phenomenal worker, phenomenal. This is because of her. So she deserves the credit here, and I thank you, Miss Fran. We will see you tomorrow.
All right. For everybody else, we have a bunch of these. We are going to provide a recording. This is going to go on YouTube. And we are going to do another one of these next week. So I'll put that info out to the same places I did. I don't know how you found us this time. I'd love to have that information actually. But it'll go out through our mailing list. It'll go out on our social. Everybody should go on TikTok and follow Jeremy. That's where all the hot content is coming these days, just so you know. Yeah, I'm going to close this off. I appreciate everybody. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me, Alex at Climb Capital, or obviously Bob or Jeremy, and get some more information. Thank you very much for coming.
See you guys.